I think it's safe to say that Thomas and Friends' 80th anniversary merchandise is fire. That's what the young people are saying, right? Fire means good. And with All Engines Go appearing to conclude in its fourth season, as there are no plans to carry it on after its fourth season, a lot of fans have been asking this question. Should the franchise become a toy franchise for a while? I seen this question pop up on my Instagram and I thought, I need to do a video on it. So I'll go into the basics around it, the pros around it becoming a toy franchise, the cons around it becoming a toy franchise, and I'll make my conclusion at the end. Once again, these are all my own personal opinions. Your thoughts will definitely differ from mine. One thing that makes the Thomas fandom so unique. And let me know down in the comments what you think of this particular question. Should Thomas become a toy franchise for a while? All I ask is that you be respectful and above all, enjoy the video. Okay, let's dive in. For those that are unaware, as always, let's break it down. May 12th, 1945, the year that the Railway series' first book was published. May 12th, 2025 is when the Railway series' 80th anniversary will come into play. A huge milestone for Thomas and Friends fans and Railway series fans all around the world. As such, every toy company are producing quality merchandise right now, so we will splash exorbitant amounts of cash on it. This is ranging from t-shirts to Trackmaster toys, 80th anniversary specials, so on and so forth. And there'll probably still be more to come even after I have dropped this video. But everything that we've seen so far is top quality merchandise. The only one that I am not too fussed on is Bachman, but there's still plenty of time for them to pull it out the bag. So after a quite substantial famine of not getting decent merchandise from Mattel or any of the Thomas and Friends merch, we are now getting a feast of it to gluttonous proportions. And it is now begging the question from the fans of whether this franchise should become a toy franchise for the time being, as the quality has really stepped up in the last few months. So as usual, there are pros and cons to this type of question, and I'm going to go into them. And I'm going to start with the pros. The first one being that we already have great Thomas fan content online. While Thomas and Friends may not be firing on all cylinders in the TV department, with several of the fandom not really being a big fan of All Engines Go, or even when the CGI series was in its Big World Big Adventures era, the fandom really stepped up online. They've created great fan stories around our lovable cast of characters. I have done some reviews on my channel of some fan content that I particularly enjoy, if you want to check out the playlist. But it does show you that the fans really have a solid grasp on the franchise of Thomas and Friends. They're producing content left, right and centre that everybody is enjoying. And they're enjoying it a lot more than the traditional TV episodes that are coming out. This has been a problem ever since the classic series started to come to an end. When Hit took over from Thomas and Friends and did their soft reboot in season 8, there was a writer's bible put in place, and it didn't seem like they really understood the motivations of the characters, which led to inferior storylines. Nitrogen era didn't do any better, but then when we got Andrew Brenner in, who was a Thomas fan and understood the Thomas franchise, we got what was called the Renaissance. Quality stories with slightly flanderized characters, I'll give them that, but overall it was much better than what we were getting. And it was a golden period in the TV series. Then Big World Big Adventures happened, the quality took a dip, they adjusted the market to just go back to babies and toddlers rather than something that not only babies and toddlers could enjoy, but all families could enjoy. Then it stopped at season 24, we get All Engines Go, you get the idea. So we have plenty of decent content online for the fans to enjoy, and we can watch it over and over again for free on YouTube. So it brings me to my next point. Franchise might benefit from a bit of a rest. I've mentioned before, fandoms of any franchise that's long running are quite vocal in their discontent. If they don't like something that's going on with the franchise, they tend to jump on it like a cat with rabies. And again, this isn't me talking about the Thomas and Friends fandom in general. Transformers fans, Thundercats fans, any fandom that is a long-running franchise that sees a dip in quality, they go bananas. It's a reactory world, it's a reactory market. If things aren't going the way that we want it to go for our characters that we know and love and have grew up with throughout our childhood into our adulthood, we do react negatively. So maybe a bit of a rest will be good for Thomas and Friends. Some of the fandom already feel like it does need a bit of a breather. Absence does make the heart grow fonder. So maybe having this little break from Thomas and Friends in a TV series capacity and just focus on making quality merchandise might be good for the franchise. And it might build back up some good graces that Mattel has lost over the last 10 years. Now we'll get this elephant in the room out of the way. All Engines Go is coming to an end anyway. At least that's what it looks like from the outsider's perspective. Season 4 looks like it's going to be the final All Engines Go series, especially because Nelvana's parent company, Chorus, is on the verge of bankruptcy. And if they don't have an animation studio to keep making the series, or if they decide to bring back the CGI version of Thomas and Friends due to the popularity of the merchandise, they'll still need to find some sort of animation studio to carry on, regardless. So if All Engines Go is having what seems like a natural conclusion, why don't we let it have its day for a little while? And the obvious final pro is that this 80th merchandise is fire. I've already touched on it throughout this video. We're getting quality merchandise being pumped out because that seems to be all they're focusing on right now. They're focusing on the anniversary, they're focusing on making the best merchandise that they can, so we will trump up the cash for it. And if they keep doing this and they keep producing great merchandise, we are going to buy it. Steve, if you build it, they will come analogy. If you're producing great content, we will show support in kind. If you're not producing great content, and that includes merchandise, we talk with our wallets. We don't open them, we don't purchase anything. I've already talked about how I've purchased a couple of Thomas and Friends t-shirts, the only two that I can get on Thomas and Friends' Amazon UK store. And I will get something to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the franchise because it is a big deal. It's a monumental milestone. So if the merchandise is fire, let's keep pouring gasoline on that fire. It looks like you're going to bring back die-cast models of Thomas and Friends. You've already got the Thomas one with its Railway Series style artwork. You'd carry on and do the 8 famous engines. That would be a little collector's piece. But with pros, there's always cons. So let's go into the cons of why Thomas and Friends going off of our screens would be detrimental to the franchise. And the first one is pretty obvious. No mainstream exposure. We may live in a society that's becoming more digital, but TV is still a massive player in this game. Any episodes of Thomas and Friends that are getting brought out on mainstream television, satellite, cable, whatever medium it is, they require sponsorship. Sponsorship brings in revenue to create the merchandise that the fans would want. You take away this crucial revenue stream of brand new episodes of a long-running franchise, then sponsors are going to look the other way. They're not going to invest in a program that isn't likely to return on their investment. Maybe the content of Thomas and Friends All Engines Go might not be the best for some of the fandom, but it's kept Thomas in the public eye. It's introduced it to generations of new fans, and that's what Mattel really needs. You need to keep feeding the up-and-coming generations of fans that are going to ask their parents to buy the merchandise and then keep lining Mattel's pockets. Another point that I wanted to bring up in a previous video, but I actually cut it because I wasn't sure if it was going to go down well, but a couple of comments were raised on it, so I'm going to bring it up now. We only need to look at what's happening with Hasbro and Transformers. In 2024, Transformers celebrated its 40th anniversary, as well as Thomas and Friends, and they celebrated it by bringing out Transformers 1. Now, I went to see this movie with my kids. They were interested in seeing it because the marketing side of it just presented it as similar to the Michael Bay films. Transformers knocking lumps at each other, no real story. When I went to see it, I was pleasantly surprised. There was a really grounded, almost Shakespearean tragedy-like story there, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But because it was marketed one way, and the traditional Transformers fans didn't want to go and see more Michael Bay-style Transformers films, they voted with their wallets. They didn't go to see the film, which in turn led the film to not do as well in the box office as previous Transformers films had done. As such, Hasbro decided that they are no longer going to back Transformers properties. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because this is a potential warning to what could happen if we take Thomas and Friends off of our TV screens right now. If we take Thomas and Friends All Engines Go away from TV, Mattel might just lose interest. They might decide, no, we're not going to have anything to do with any TV or movie Thomas and Friends going forward. As such, they won't put their hands into their own pockets to splash the cash to keep the franchise going, and it may enter a period of even more uncertainty. There's all this talk about the Mark Forster movie for Thomas and Friends. It's all speculation. We don't know if it's going to happen. But if fans are crying for a rest from Thomas and Friends, the Mark Forster movie might not happen at all. Mattel might just decide to pull it. There's no more mainstream exposure, and they might permanently shelve Thomas and Friends. So we need to look at what Hasbro's doing with Transformers and really ask ourselves, do we want that to happen to Thomas and Friends and Mattel? Another point that I brought up in a previous video, we're getting Fire merch for the 80th anniversary. What's going to happen afterwards? Think about what happened with the 70th anniversary. We were treated to a marvellous feast of celebrations for Thomas and Friends. But then the next 9 years was, quite frankly, a shower of shit. We had probably some of the darkest points of our Thomas and Friends fandom. What happened? Then it looked like the series was going to stop altogether. Then All Engines Go came along, and in turn the toy merchandise just got worse and worse and worse. They were just pumping out bargain basement product because they thought it's just for babies and toddlers anyway. History does have a habit of repeating itself. So what's to stop Mattel from doing the exact same thing after this milestone has passed? My final point is that if Thomas and Friends stops, there's no guarantee it's going to come back. How many times have you seen your favourite band or your favourite TV show take a hiatus, and they describe it as a hiatus, saying, we're going to come back, just give us a little bit of time to rest. And then all of a sudden you're waiting 25 years to see your favourite band reunite, or your favourite show come back to the big screen. What's to stop that happening with Thomas and Friends? The longer you are out of the public eye, the more you slip away from public consciousness. The further you slip away, the less chance you're going to get brought back. Now, a lot of people think maybe Thomas and Friends does need the rest. It needs some time away. But what happens when 2 years becomes 5 years? 5 years becomes 10 years. 10 years becomes 20 years. The less outcry and demand that there is for a Thomas TV series, the less likely it's going to be brought back. Sure, a little break is fine, maybe a couple of years, but would you really want to see it slip away into nothing? Because that could happen. Mattel have the IP, they can do whatever they want with it. And if they see that the fandom aren't really missing Thomas and Friends on TV, they're not going to bring it back if they take it off. It's a kind of be careful what you wish for situation. So those are the pros and cons, and now I'm going to give you my thoughts. I do agree that Thomas and Friends does need a little bit of a rest, because the only direction that the TV series has been going in, quite frankly, is down. But at the same time, I am very worried that if we just focus on this being a toy line, then it's going to go away and never come back. Now, there are franchises that have relied exclusively on toy sales to start with, and then they've made TV shows around it. Barbie's done that with TV series and a movie. He-Man did that with their toy line. But we lived in a different time back then. There was more demand to see things on TV because it was the only way that you could get to see your characters. I personally want to see quality merchandise from Thomas and Friends and a quality TV product. It's not hard to do. It just requires them putting in that little bit extra effort. If Mattel keeps putting the work in that they're doing for the 80th anniversary, beyond the 80th anniversary, they will see results. And those are my thoughts on whether Thomas and Friends should become a toy franchise. Let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on chugging.